When it comes to church planting, one of the big issues we all wrestle with is our facilities. Particularly, should we have a 24/7 space or should we go portable? Well, in this episode of Practical Church Planting, we are going to give you 6 reasons why you should consider a permanent space for your church.
Thanks for joining us again today on Practical Church Planting. We're going to give you 6 reasons why we recommend a permanent facility for a church plant.
Yeah, there's positives and negatives to all sides.
Yes.
We've talked about this in episodes. It's probably obvious we lean towards it if it's possible to have your own space. And so if you're planting or moving anytime soon, you're thinking about it, we want to maybe tell you why we think permanent facilities are like all the benefits of it that you may not be thinking of or that you may not realize are positive benefits of it. So we've been permanent our whole time, 24/7, which wasn't the plan, but we're grateful for it now.
Yep.
We sent out our first church plant with the goal of having their own building from the beginning, and they have their own 24/7 space. And I think just like it was helpful to us. I think it's been really helpful to them. And I think if they hadn't had it, things wouldn't be as well as they are. And we'll talk about the reasons for that. So we're just going to give you reasons to heavily consider it.
Yes, and we're not saying it's the only option.
No.
Obviously, everyone knows church plants that are portable that do great. But if you're given the opportunity to explore both options, then here are some reasons to look at one.
Yeah, I think maybe put it this way: if you have the option, then I would go towards this way. Or maybe I would do some research to push and not just assume that you shouldn't or that you can't.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think a lot of people do just assume that it's just not going to be realistic because it generally requires a little more of it may not necessarily be more expensive, but maybe more financial work up front to sign a lease and things like that. So don't assume that it's something that you have to rule out at the beginning.
But also, I think, too, the assumption comes with, you just don't realize, you kind of feel like portable and permanent are kind of equal, and one is less risk because you can get out of the lease at any time. And I think in all things being equal, our opinion is having your own space is the better option if you can do it. Maybe not all the times, but just generally speaking.
Sure.
So here are 6 reasons why we think that. Number 1 has to go with a disadvantage that people often say, here's why I don't want to do portable. In our opinion, it is actually an advantage of why you should do portable. And that is outgrowing your space is an advantage. So people are like, what happens if I get a space and we're outgrowing it and we don't have any more space? Well, there's a couple things you say. Number 1, churches don't grow super fast often. So it's like if you sign a 3-year lease, chances are you're not going to completely outgrow it in 3 years. Now, that's great if you do, or if you have a lot of people, because then what you have to do then is to go to, what do? 2 services.
2 services.
And here's the thing about 2 services. Is it allows your people to be on mission sooner than you would think, and allows them to not think about just what we want. And so for us, the positive thing is if you have a space, it's your own space, probably not going to be that big. It's going to force you to multiply your services sooner, which allows you to have these conversations way sooner than you would have. So for us, our first space was really small. We went to 2 services when most people wouldn't at all, and we always got the handful of we don't want to do 2 services. We like all being together, but then they saw that there was a reason for it, and people like seeing a room that is full. There's a lot of cool things that come of that, and so we got to go to 2 services, and it just allows us to talk about, hey, this isn't just about what we want. It also allows us to talk about things like groups because we do value relationships, and so you should be at a church where you know people, but it gets out of this mindset of this church is just for me, and so we would say outgrowing your space is a high advantage. Because then you can just go to 2 services. The likelihood of you having to go to multiple services after that within 3 years, which is like an average lease, is very unlikely. I mean, that happened to us, but it turned out to be okay because we eventually found our space, about 3 years anyway. But a lot of people say we're going to outgrow it. That's a problem. You're probably not going to outgrow it. And so we'll talk about some other reasons why that's a good thing, why, since you're not going to outgrow it, you should have a regular space anyway. But if you do, you can kind of get people to live on mission quicker than you would have otherwise. Yeah,
and I mean, you should be able to realistically tell how likely it is you're going to outgrow it based on how many people you can fit. Like if the only space that you're looking at that's permanent can fit no more than 30, 40 chairs, which I mean there are legitimate spaces that people look at that can do that, then hopefully, probably going to outgrow that. And it's probably not a good place to go in the first place. But if you're looking at a place that's a kind of respectable size, obviously you don't want to get something massive, which you can't afford anyways, in the beginning. But outgrowing, even though it's unlikely, if it happens, that means things are going well, and that there might be a way that you can get out of the lease, possibly if that's even a thing that you need to do. But that's not just I don't think that's just an inherent negative. To just assume we're going to outgrow it, and so we shouldn't even pursue that option.
And there are always options to get out of your lease a little earlier. That's what we did as well. But generally speaking, you're probably not going to outgrow your space. There's a lot of advantages to staying in a space or to having your own space. And if you do outgrow one service, you can go to two services. And that's a great thing because, again, it might allow you to do that sooner than a portable space that was bigger. So you could have these conversations about, how the church is not just about what we want and our preferences. And so this whole idea of what happens if we outgrow it, go to two services. You're probably not going to outgrow two services if you're a brand new church plant. Anyway. So.
Yeah, and this is one of the benefits of having a good, obviously this isn't totally in your control, but having a decent relationship with your landlord to where you can actually be discussing what's going on. Yeah. And so if by some, stroke of luck, whatever, you are outgrowing it, if you have a good relationship with a landlord, whether they're local or not, you can at least be talking to them about what this actually looks like and go forward from there. However, if you're just kind of want to do your own thing and don't want to have any discussion with them, it's going to be a lot tougher when it comes to that. If it comes ever to that point where you have to have that conversation.
But a lot of places, they'll have like a 6 months notice clause or whatever, and so it's totally can work with it. And so having a place to grow and going to multiple services is a great thing. And most churches I think what we can do is we can think too far in the future and then limit us in the present. And what problem would you rather have? Having a space that's too big, there's no energy, or having a space that you're two services at and you're trying to figure out what to do?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the likelihood, as long as you get a regular size space of outgrowing two services, because I think a lot of times you think outgrow one, but outgrowing two, which I think we would say if you're outgrowing two, it's probably time to look for a different space. Like 3 is a tough one. If I can't remember what I was going to say, if you're looking at a space where you, gosh, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, all I know is we went to 3 services, but our space was so small that it was too small for that. So like, if it can sit, I mean, I don't really want to give numbers, but I don't know, 75 to 100, that's fine. You might think, what if we do more than that? Well, get there first, and then go to 2 services. Likelihood of you having like 250 people is small, especially if you're a brand new church plant right away. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. And it is a problem. I mean, I'm not going to say like having not enough room does have its frustrations because like we had that frustration. It wasn't fun, but it was certainly better than having a space that you couldn't fill up.
It was, it had some energy. And I remember I was going to say is exactly what you just said. Don't base your your financial decisions and your facility decision on the likelihood of this thing that's very unlikely of outgrowing 2 services, not outgrowing 1, but outgrowing 2. The likelihood of that happening is so small in that 3, potentially like 2-3 year time frame, not for eternity, but in this time where money's probably going to be tighter than it is ever going to be, most likely for the duration of the church's life. At the beginning is when it's the tightest. So then to say we want to do something bigger, we want to do something different because this isn't big enough, could really put you in a bind.
Yeah. So outgrowing, we would say, is actually an advantage, not a disadvantage.
Yep.
That's the first reason. The second reason is that people are more likely to serve. So I will say this. Setup teardown is great in the beginning because it allows, if you're a brand new church plant, it allows people to build relationships with one another. They're doing things, they're tangibly seeing that like a serving is making a difference. That's great. But it does, like if we're being honest, after a while, it gets old and you have to rely on the same people to always show up and the same 1 or 2 people that drive the trailer. And so there's just a lot of things, parts at risk. I'm not saying there's certainly advantages of it, but there's a lot of disadvantages of it. And what we found is, but when we would do extra events and things, because people served, but not like no one was serving for like 6 hours from like 6 a.m. to, because you didn't have to be there super early and then you didn't have to stay super late. People were more likely to serve just on our normal Sunday positions because you don't have to divvy it up between setup and tear down and like the other things, hospitality that you want. But then also events like, we would do like once a month, like social events or fun things or whatever. The likelihood of serving is a lot higher because they're not like spending so much time and feeling like they're always doing stuff, and having to serve for the church. And so a positive of having your own space is that it gives you the ability to have more people serve on Sunday morning because there's less division between where you're trying to get slots filled and things outside of Sunday morning because they're not already spending hours multiple Sundays a week, if not every Sunday, setting up and tearing down.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, if you have to go portable, it's just one of the things you're going to have to, just one of the realities of life you got to deal with is it takes more people on a Sunday morning. I mean, especially depending on your size and how much equipment you end up doing in your facility, setup could be a pretty big thing. Like, if you got to bring in equipment and bring in lighting, things like that. If you're not in a place that already has that set up, to where you got to have a good team, like a good sized team to do just that. And then obviously you're not going to expect them to do that and then go and greet at the door or run something else. That's a lot to expect them to do that than something else. And so you got to have a lot more people serving, which obviously can be done, but it's just it's another one of those things where it's one aspect that's a lot tougher for being portable that you may not really anticipate.
Yeah. So you just have people more likely to serve in other positions because they're not serving as much on Sundays, and during the Sunday itself, they're not tied up in other places. So that's something to consider. Number 3, and we can not like this, but it's just the reality of the situation. Having your own space gives you more credibility to others. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of past maybe in some parts of the country not so much, but I think the majority of the country we're past for a while it was really cool to be portable, to be in a movie theater or in a school, and it was like there was excitement. It was different. Now it's like you don't gain any points from that.
Sure,
it's like it is a thing, and in fact it could be a bad thing because people can see, there's been multiple churches in this movie theater or this school, and then what happened to them? And so it could kind of be like, well, they're doing. So again, this is just us meeting. It's us meeting people where they are. And so, yes, it's like having a permanent space shouldn't give you more or less credibility, but in the eyes to some, it just does.
Yep. And I think you got to remember that a lot of people that will come probably have never been a part of a church plant. Right. Like if they've gone to church before, most likely they've never helped plant a church, never been there at the beginning stages. And so being portable is just different than most people are used to. And like really along with all these other ones, this is not a sole reason not to do it. Right. But it's just one thing to consider, where especially if you get maybe an older couple or someone who's been in church, been in a more traditional type setting of church for a long time, telling them that you meet in a school or telling them to meet in a movie theater or something like that is just different. And some people may be uncomfortable going to something like a movie theater and expecting church there. Not saying that's the right thing, but it's just a reality of what it is. And so it's just one thing to consider if you're looking at doing one, especially in a facility that does something else, like a school or a movie theater where people go there for other reasons. It's just one of those hurdles you got to overcome, and you're going to have to be prepared, I think, to explain to people that this is a church, this is why we meet here. And it's not a negative thing, but it's just something that you need to be prepared for.
Yeah. And again, there are positives of meeting at places. I mean, like, for example, it makes it easier to build relationships in the community. Like if you're at a school, like you're there. But here are the things to consider that people don't always think about. Like if you're portable, you have a bunch of people who don't care, and then you have some people that think that you're not like legit.
Sure.
If you have your own building, again, you have a bunch of people who don't care either way, and then you have people who think, oh, this is like a real church. So, all things being equal in terms of having your own space and renting like a Sunday only, to some people it does give you legitimacy, which means they're going to be more likely to come. Again, that may not be the right thing to do, but we just meet people where they are and have the Paul of Jesus, and hopefully they get to the point where in the future they don't care.
Yeah.
But for some, they do, and so that can dissuade some people from coming. So the credibility to others is a reason we recommend having a facility if you can. Number 4, and when I have conversations about this sort of thing, this doesn't come up often, but it's just true. So here's a very big positive, is that your Sunday morning services will go much smoother if you have your own space. Like, I think we know that, but then we don't think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like, your screens, everything's already set up. Your audio is set up. Your lights are set up. Yes, things happen every once in a while or something breaks or whatever, but you never have to worry about being let in on time. So your setup is set on, or something like falling off the trailer, or somebody forgetting something at home that they normally bring. Like, everything about Sunday morning, it already can be kind of hectic to kind of do like run through and go through everything. But, just imagine you don't have to set up and be on a time frame. And let's say setup is delayed because you have less people, or it's raining, or what. There's so many reasons that setting up can, make maybe the service ends up being okay, but makes beforehand really stressful.
Yeah.
And when you have your own space, you don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is there's less of a possibility for issues when you're permanent. Obviously, we've been permanent this entire time, and we've had many Sundays where there have been issues. And I'm sure someone would say they've been part of a portable church where they've never experienced a single issue. And so I'm not saying that like it's going to happen if you're portable. It's not going to happen if you're permanent. But there's just more places, more kind of points along the way for things to go wrong if you are portable. Yeah. Like you said, like things on the truck, or if you have new people coming into this setup position and they're not as like technically experienced, or that's something that people really need to know what they're doing to hook up some of this equipment. There's just a lot more points along the way where you have to make sure that someone is kind of watching over everything, that really knows how everything works. We're on a Sunday morning, where if you're permanent on a Sunday morning, everything in theory should already be, plugged in, working. Hopefully you check things during the week and you can go into Sunday morning without issue. Now, always there's going to be issue with either one. It's not like one's going to be perfect, but there's just less points along the way where there's a potential for issue.
Yeah. So not only does during setup can things get broken, you realize, whatever, a whole sorts of reasons why it can make Sunday stressful.
Yeah.
Having your own space allows you to find out problems during the week that you might not have known was a problem until Sunday morning. So let's say you have something on the computer that's not working, or something that hasn't been uploaded, and because you're portable, you can't check stuff. And so there's been a lot of issues that we've fortunately found during the week, whereas if we were Sunday morning, it just would not have worked that day because we would have no way of knowing.
Yes, like your computer crashes and you have no idea about it until you check it out during the week. But thankfully, you checked it out during the week and our hard drive crashed and we had a backup plan. But Sunday morning, we would have just had nothing. We would have just been able to turn the lights on and that's it.
Yeah, and granted, the backup plan wasn't as great as having the normal plan.
No, but at least we had a few days to plan of what to do and think about what to do.
Which wouldn't have happened if not. So all that to say, Sunday services will go much smoother if you have your own space compared to portable.
Yes.
Number 5. This is also one that I hear as an advantage for being portable and not having your own space. But I'm always kind of like, I'll just say it.
Yeah.
Having your own place to work is a good thing.
Yeah, during the week.
Yeah, like you can come in, you don't have to work from home, you don't have to go to coffee shops every day or whatever. Like you can have your own place. I mean, it may not be, not everyone has like their own office or whatever, but you can have something set up, get into some sort of routine, like have storage for certain things that you like want to leave out the church and not bring home all the time with you. I've heard people say, well, if you have your own space, you can just stay in your own church office all day and not be in the community. And I'm like, well, I don't yes, you can work at a coffee shop. Well, if you have your own space, you can still work at a coffee shop. Number one,
true.
Like you can still do it. You probably won't do it as much.
Yeah.
But also, in my opinion, working at a coffee shop is not necessarily outreach.
Yes.
You're working. Maybe you get to know the barista or whatever, but not much happens outside of that. And honestly, everyone's different. For me, that sounds terrible to always have to be working in places where it's hard to focus, where people are talking. For me, if you have 2 monitors, or if you got to you just got to bring stuff with you, and it can be so all that to say, as our own space, you can still do that if you want occasionally.
Yes.
But having a place where you can work, where you can focus, where things are where you want them to be, is a big advantage that you don't have if you don't have your own space.
Yes. I agree. There's nothing making it impossible for you to go out in the community if you have your own space. If that's something that you think that is really going to help if you're working at a coffee shop, which I'm not saying it won't. If that's something that you think that's a really good outreach thing, then do it. Nobody's stopping you from doing it. Obviously, if you have your own space, it's just not something that you're forced to do. And maybe that's the argument, is that you have to be forced to do it, which is fine. But to me, there's other ways you can go about this, and I think personally, maybe unless you have a deal set up, it can get very expensive to go to a coffee shop every day.
Right.
I personally whether it's a coffee shop or somewhere else. I don't know that anyone actually does this, but I would not feel comfortable going and not buying something because I'm using their facility. And to buy something every day seems like a lot of money to spend to go work somewhere. So, there's definitely ways you can do different things, but if you have your own space, you have the option of being alone. There may be times where you need to take phone calls that maybe aren't appropriate to be in a public setting and things like that. There's times where you can be alone, and there's times where you can be in public, where if you don't have a space, you don't really have that decision unless you want to work from home.
Yeah, and we've talked about on various episodes about productivity and focus, and you can't do those things in a public place ever. And so, I don't know, this whole pastors are always busy. Maybe it's because we're always at coffee shops and taking 4 hours to do stuff that could take us 2 hours if we actually focused.
It could be. And one other kind of bonus to this, which you may not be experiencing right up front, but maybe in the first couple of years of when you have the space, is as you bring staff on, whether they're paid staff or volunteer staff, telling them they have a place to come to work, even if it's just they're coming in for a few hours a week, regardless of their time frame, helps build morale with people. If you tell someone, I want you to be staff, but I am really only going to see you on Sundays, or you can come sit at a coffee shop with me. That's fine if that's what you got to do, but it'll help them build some permanency and feel like this is actually their place, if they have a place they can come and work. Even if that place they come work is a card table in the middle of the lobby, which is fine.
And in terms of cost, we've also seen a lot of you have the school, but then you also have office space because you need office space. So then you're no longer saving any money because you're paying for something, two different things.
Yes.
So all that to say, having a place to work, there could be some advantages of maybe being forced to have to be out. But I think the net positive of being able to like focus and work when you have to work, and then like go meet with people and not when you want to meet with people, and having more control over your schedule, I think it's a positive thing. And so having your own building makes that happen.
Yes, it does.
And then number 6, last but certainly not least.
Maybe best.
I don't
know. This has worked out real well for us.
And, it's not something maybe I would have thought much of before we launched. And it's also a thing that I think people don't realize how beneficial it is.
Yes.
In terms, I think some people think this is not a good thing. We found it to be a great thing, so we'll explain. Here's the last one. That you can host events at your church. Like, we've done trivia night, cookout stuff, movie, like a bunch of random stuff.
Yep.
Now, I know the argument is like, you need to be doing stuff out in the community. Just like, let's say you should be working.
Sure.
Here's the thing. Like, think of how great it is to be able for you to invite your friends, or for people at your church to invite their friends to your church, to a place that you're not doing like church stuff. And so it's just relaxed. They can at least get comfortable with what the building looks like.
Yeah.
They now know where it is. They can like picture themselves, being there. They've seen other people at your church, at the church.
Yep.
It has just been really helpful to have an event at your church where people can know where your church is, and it's not a church thing.
Yep.
And we've also found that our people are much more likely to come to events when we host them at the church than when we host them not at the church.
True.
And again, you can say, well, community, whatever, but like people, it's like, I think everyone will understand this. If you've ever been in a small group or community group, right? And let's say the leaders are gone that week, and you can either cancel group, or sometimes maybe you'll try to do it at the person's house who doesn't normally host.
Sure, yeah.
And even if that person lives within 5 minutes from where the group leader lives, people just don't come. They just don't. It's just in their mind.
It's out of routine.
Right. And even though like there's nothing different about it, they will not, like half the people will come. And we have just found that with our events. Like, we could do something really fun and cool at a park somewhere, or we could do it here. And just because people are familiar with it, and I think our people like the fact that they can invite their friends to our church, and not feel like it's a Sunday morning thing where they might feel awkward. They can meet people at the church, like, you can see people are normal. And we've just found this has been a really big positive thing that, of course, you can't do if you don't own the space.
Yes, I mean, you can do events at, like you said, other places, and there's the benefit of being kind of outreachy or gaining exposure, if that's the way you want to put it. But I would argue that you're much more likely to retain people and get exposed to people by your people inviting someone to something that you're hosting than just by someone happening to be in the same facility of something you're doing. Right. So if you do an event at a park, there may be other people there that get to see your stuff, maybe you get to talk to, which is great, maybe even come to the church. But I think you're going to be much more likely for people to actually invite people to something at your building, and those people are going to be much more likely to actually come back and stick.
I mean, the biggest thing is they know where you are now. If you meet at a park or something, then you got to explain we're here. They haven't seen it. There's still awkwardness when it's your first time somewhere. Not to say it's not going to be awkward on their first Sunday, but if you've already been there once, it's just like you kind of know what's going on there.
Yeah. So it doesn't need to be one is good for outreach, one is not good for outreach. I think permanent is actually better for outreach, just in the way that we don't always recognize.
Right.
Because it gives people the opportunity to bring people that they already know in. They're kind of people they're already comfortable with, and allows them to stick. And there's things that, like, even if you go to other facilities, if we were portable, there's just stuff we couldn't do. Like we did, we've done trivia for 3.5 years, like almost from the beginning, like almost this entire time. And it's a ton of fun, but we do it regularly. And so even though I'm sure we could find a way to do it outside of the building, but we wouldn't be able to do it as frequent because it would cost us money. Like, and there's just things that we wouldn't be able to do that have proved to be really, really beneficial.
And all the setup, like even for trivia night, we have slides and everything.
Yeah, it would definitely be a lot
food.
worse.
Like, I don't know how you would do that somewhere else. It wouldn't be fun outside. Or it'd be
something that takes so much planning. We could only do it maybe once or twice a year. Like, it's not something we could do monthly or quarterly like we do now.
So events, and then if you have some training or something, like, people know where it is. It's just people get used to it. They have the routine. Even if something is, like, even the small group example, it's like 5 minutes away. People just don't come. Because it's not normal to them.
Yep.
And so those are 6 reasons we recommend permanent facilities. There are definitely there are cons to it, and there are pros to being portable. But I think some of these things we don't realize. Like, I think, in my opinion, how I've seen these conversations a lot is just they're kind of neutral. And since they're kind of neutral and there's less financial risk in terms of, like, liability, then just go portable. In our opinion, they're not neutral. There's pros and cons to both. But there are a lot of pros to having your own 24/7 space that if you had like, I know it doesn't always work like this, but if you literally had all things being equal, you could do a portable, a 24/7. We would absolutely say 24/7. And so because of that, we would encourage you, if you're in the church planning phase or you're currently portable and you never really thought about 24/7, to maybe think about it more, I don't know, intentionally, because in our opinion, it will help you more than you realize. We wouldn't say like make some crazy risk, some financial risk, and like it'll save your church if you're struggling. But it will help you. It helped us when we started and we were small. It helped the church that we planted as they're getting out. I don't think they'd be doing as well without our own space. So that's what we would recommend.
Yeah, we're not saying that you need to give up everything that you're looking for in a space so that you could find a space that's permanent. And even if it doesn't check any of the boxes that you need, just because it's permanent, it's the one to go with. But if you can find things that do check the boxes you want, I think the better way to put it is don't just assume permanent's not going to work for you because maybe it's too expensive or you feel like it's hard to find. Obviously where we are, and we know churches multiple different states in the country, and obviously where Adam planted is in a different city, where people have been able to find affordable, permanent facility. So maybe it's not possible specifically where you're at, but don't rule it out without finding out.
And we didn't even add this to the list, but even like making the space look how you want it to look.
Yeah,
like you can put
the
the connect or like next steps or like it's just you can make it a lot more the way that you want it to be, a lot more clear and obvious which people should go. Whereas if you're portable, you can't do that nearly as well.
Yeah, it's good.
So, those are 6 reasons we recommend permanent facilities for your church. Thanks for joining us. Again, if you want to get more information, church planning advice and tips, you can go 2 places. One is Facebook. Join the Practical Church Planning group. We're over 1,000 people now.
Yes.
So that's exciting. You can also go to practicalplanting.com. We've got a lot of resources there. We've even got a course that a lot of people have been checking out, and we've heard good things from. So that's it. Thanks for listening, and we'll be with you next week on Practical Church Planting.